Alrighty, I think we are live streaming. Maybe somebody will call in. We'll see what happens. That chat. All right, so what you're coming in on here is me editing episode 121 of the House of EdTech podcast, which I host over at chrisnessy.com. So if you're joining on Facebook Live, welcome. If you're checking us out on Twitch, welcome. Periscope, welcome. Happy Saturday night. YouTube, hello YouTube. And for the first time, we are on Mixer editing the podcast. So this is exciting. Hopefully the audio is coming in. You have the chat open. I should probably also open up Facebook. Make sure I've got that chat going. And I'll edit. I could talk to all of you. That's always fun. So let's put that over there. That over here. And I think we'll be good. I might be the only one watching this right now. Cool. All right, so if you got something to say, say it. Say it now. Thing. Looks like we're live, so I am going to edit the podcast. Hey, Mark. Good to see you if you're watching. Thank you for liking the live video. But 5 out of 5 connected. All right, that works. Hey, Mark. Hopefully that new baby is doing well. Thanks for checking out me editing my podcast. You're going to be starting your new dig soon. You enter the world of parenthood. So that's exciting. Alrighty, here we go. Definitely some mistakes in this one. For those who don't know, what you're looking at here is I edit in Audacity, which is free. And also what you see here is the file that I get when I record the podcast using Voicemeeter. So that is a virtual mixer for my desktop. So I don't have an actual mixer here in studio. So I use Voicemeeter, which is free and virtual. It lets me map the different pieces of audio on my computer. So when I record, I'm recording. This is an 8-channel track. Does it do video too? Does what do video? You're talking about my podcast? No. Typically audio only. Oh, does Audacity do video too? No, Audacity is only for editing audio. Actually, now that I know that's over here, I'm going to switch this so I can see the chat a little more readily. Yeah. Yeah, Audacity is only for editing audio. So when I pull my tracks from Voicemeeter in, it is the full 8 channels, but as you can see, if I zoom all the way out, I don't have any data in a number of the channels because I'm not doing a full 8-channel recording. So when I open that up, the first thing I do is I delete the unused channels. And these first 2 channels in my recording are not, it pulls together everything that I recorded into a left and a right. So I also don't use these either. So when I'm recording just an episode of my own show, this is what I am left with. So this top track is all me. The second track is all of the music and any sound effects that I use in a given episode. So let's take this all the way to the beginning and get a little closer. When I'm editing, I like to start the show within a half second to a second. So that way when people are listening in their cars or wherever, it doesn't necessarily just go right into it. There is a little bit of a almost negligible space. So today I feel like doing half a second. So we'll get rid of that. And let's see what we got so far.
Hey y'all, this is Gretchen from Always a Lessons Empowering Educators podcast. I'm a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts, but make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
Coming up on episode number 121 of the House of EdTech podcast, I went to Harvard, and I'm going to tell you all about it, along with the House of EdTech VIP and a recommendation. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nesi. Hey, thanks for checking it out, Mark. Stop in anytime. Hello, Randall Black. Yes, I am rocking another live stream, and this one I'm actually going to see all the way through as I'm editing episode 121 of, hey, you can see it in the video, the House of EdTech podcast. So let's get right into the intro here. Welcome back to the House of EdTech podcast. I'm so excited that you've chosen this podcast for some of your anytime, anywhere professional development. Happy fall. Hope you had a great Halloween. Hope you didn't get sick on any of the candy that you took from your children, because I know you did the same thing that I did, which was take candy from your kids. So it's fall. The weather is not beautiful here in New Jersey. Hopefully the weather is beautiful wherever you are. But thank you for checking in with this episode of the podcast. Let's get right to some very important things. Let's wrap up the most recent contest, which was to give away the Mead Heat Seal Laminator. So, as I said a few episodes ago, I had 2 to give away, and all you had to do was rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Stitcher, and if that wasn't your cup of tea, then to just send me an email and let me know what you think of the show and provide any feedback or thoughts on the podcast. And many of you entered, but only 2 are going to walk away, sort of. I'm just going to tighten up some of the spaces here. And for those of you watching me edit this in the live stream, I'm not going to reveal the winners here in the live stream. So if you're not subscribed, you need to go to chrisnesi.com/subscribe to find out who won the latest giveaway, which was 2 heat seal laminators from Mead, the Trapper Keeper people. Mead heat seal laminator. So congratulations to, I'm not going to tell you guys. Make sure you check out episode 121 tomorrow. Nice review and a rating on Apple Podcasts, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you, I have to skip ahead and find out where I'm not talking about the winners. Sheets for helping me with that part of the contest. So what both of you need to do, I paused it here for some reason. So what both of you need to do, let's see, what did I say here? That were randomly pulled. Thank you to Google Sheets for helping me with that part of the contest. So what both of you need to do, oh, that just doesn't sound good. So what both of you need to do is email me. feedback@chrisnesi.com with your contact information. So like your address and your phone number. And I will get the Mead Heat Seal laminators in the mail to you as soon as possible. But now it's on you. So just get me that contact information and I'll get that right out to you. And thank you again to Mead for supporting the podcast in this way by providing 2 units that I was able to give away to you, my awesome listeners. Now, if you entered and you're still interested in adding this to your arsenal of classroom tools, I will also include a link to the Mead Heat Seal Laminator, an Amazon link, in the show notes for this episode over at chrisnesi.com/121, and feel free to purchase one. Again, the retail price is about $18, and if you do that, you'd also be helping the podcast as well. Hello, Allison, if you're watching. Thank you for liking the video on Facebook. Just editing episode 121 of the podcast. So thanks for tuning in. Be helping the podcast as well. Insert swishy sound. If you're one of the many people who entered but obviously did not win one of the laminators. All right, so we're going to cut it back. Let's see, where does this come in? Now, if you entered and you're still interested in adding this to your arsenal of classroom tools, if you're one of the many people who entered but obviously did not win. Now, if you're one of the many to you, my awesome listeners. Now, if you're one of the many people who entered but obviously did not win one of the laminators, but you're still interested in adding this arsenal to your classroom tools, I will, of course, include a link to Amazon where you can pick up the Mead Heat Seal Laminator. And again, the price is only about $18. And if you purchase it, you'd also be helping out the podcast. Speaking of helping the podcast, when I mention my awesome supporters in every episode, while this is one way you can help, I understand that this doesn't work for everyone. And I mean, only in my wildest dreams would I imagine that everybody who listens would become an awesome supporter. But that's not why I'm going to say what I'm going to say. One other way that you can help generate the resources, and I'm going to start this again. See, I'm not perfect, people. Speaking of helping the podcast, I mention my awesome supporters in every episode. And while that is one way that you can help, I do understand that it's not, and it's Boop, boop, boop. I don't know what I was thinking there. Speaking of helping the podcast, I mentioned my Yeah, I was having a rough one here. Let's see. Does it get better over here? Speaking of helping the podcast. There we go. All right. Cut out all of that. Let's just... All right. See, editing a podcast is fun, especially when you have to listen to yourself. Purchase it, you'd also be helping out the podcast. Speaking of helping the podcast, I mention my awesome supporters in every episode. Speaking of helping, there's no S there. Uh-oh. Get rid of it. I mention my awesome supporters in every episode. That'll do. And while that is one way you can help, I understand that it's not going to work for everyone to become an awesome supporter. One of the other ways that I'm able to generate the resources is as an Amazon affiliate. Besides telling someone else about the podcast, this is the easiest thing you can do to help support the House of EdTech. All you need to do is go in your browser and bookmark chrisnesi.com/Amazon and use that anytime you want to make an Amazon purchase. You don't pay any more for anything you purchase on Amazon, but Amazon, because I send you to Amazon, sort of, I get a very, very tiny portion of the purchase, sort of like commission, except I have no idea who you are or what you buy. All I know is from time to time, Amazon will send me some of this affiliate income. And that helps to do many of the things that I have to pay for to make the podcast go. Let me just say here that to use the word income is like a super huge word for a small thing. Now, granted, there are a lot of people out there who make quite a killing through affiliate marketing. I am not going to retire off of what I make from Amazon, but it is nice to offset some of the costs for what I do. So anytime you hear me mention a product or a book or anything that I say, oh, the link will be in the show notes, I say that because those are Amazon affiliate links, and a little bit does go a long way, and it does add up over time, and it helps to make the show go. So I mention this now because we're getting ready to enter the holiday season. So really consider bookmarking chrisnessy.com/Amazon and consider making this your gateway to Amazon. And not only will you get the things that you want, you'll also be helping a podcast that you enjoy. With the holiday season rapidly approaching, that means we're getting near the end of the year. And that means one thing: the 2018 House of EdTech Smackdown. If you're new to the podcast, this is something I do at the end of each calendar year. So we're getting ready to wrap up year 5 of the House of EdTech. And this is your episode where you get to share your favorite tech tip, a tool, an app, a website, or anything that you want to share with the entire House of EdTech community. You all have been great each and every year that we've done this. And we always get a lot of great shares. So many awesome recommendations have come right from you here at the end of the calendar year. And I want you to share something in this year's Smackdown. So just head over to chrisnessy.com/feedback and send me an email, or better yet, remember, this is an audio podcast, record a message via SpeakPipe, and I'll play it on the podcast. Or you can obviously record yourself and send that to me in an email as well. The deadline for this year's Smackdown is Friday, December 14th, 2018, and the Smackdown will be in episode 124, and that's going to get released on December 16th. That's all the stuff I have here at and that's going to get released on December 16th. That's all the stuff I have here at the top of the episode. Now let's head over to my featured content. So, let's see something here. Can I change the titles? I think that means it's working. Okay. Most recently, as I sit here recording this, the last big thing that I did was I attended sound education at Harvard in Massachusetts. A very exciting day. A very exciting day. Because I spent 5 hours in the car driving to Boston, did what I had to do, and then spent 5 hours driving home. So it was a very long day. But I'll get a little bit into that in a few minutes. First, I need to say thank you to the folks that put on Sound Education, which were Zachary Davis, Joseph Friedman, and Doug Metzger. Sound Education was a 3-day event held at Harvard University for educational and academic podcasters and radio hosts and their listeners. It was hosted by the Ministry of Ideas, which is a podcast based out of the Harvard Divinity School. And I, your fearless leader, was invited to moderate a panel on podcasting in K-12 education. It doesn't sound as funny as it did when I first said it. Divinity School. And I, your fearless leader, was in Divinity School. And I was invited to moderate a panel on podcasting in K-12 education. I want to first shout out and let you know who the panelists were, because these were 4 really awesome individuals that I got to really put into the spotlight by moderating this conversation. So the panelists I got to work with were Marcus from Making Gay History, which you can find at makinggayhistory.com. The panelists were Eric Marcus, who is the creator and co-host of Making Gay History. I want to first shout out and let you know who the panelists were, because these were 4 really awesome individuals that I got to really put into the spotlight by moderating this conversation. So the panelists I got to work with were Marcus from Making Gay History. The panelists were Eric Marcus, who is the creator and co-host this conversation. The panelists were Eric Marcus, who is the creator and co-host of Making Gay History, which you can find at makinggayhistory.com. Eric Marcus is the author of a dozen books, which include Making Gay History, Is It a Choice? Why Suicide? Is It a Choice? Why Suicide? And Breaking the Surface, which was the ¡1 New York Times bestselling autobiography of Olympic diving champion Greg Louganis. Next on the panel was Miss Karen Gage, and she is from ListenWise, which you can find at listenwise.com. Karen Gage is an education technology industry veteran with a flair for understanding markets and client needs. She is known for delivering high-impact strategy during her 15-plus years leading marketing and product organizations. Karen was instrumental in helping create and evolve the learning management system industry, from the early introduction to a ubiquitous core technology in education. Most recently, she was the VP of from the early introduction to a ubiquitous core technology in education. Most recently, she was the VP of Technology Products for Pearson's School Achievement Services. There she saw that K-12 educators were ready to embrace digital innovation, and that inspired her to join ListenWise in 2014. Also on the panel was Deborah Fowler from History Unerased, which you can find at unerased.org. Deb Fowler is a veteran, former classroom teacher. She's a U.S. Army veteran, documentary filmmaker, public speaker, and co-founder and executive director of History Unerased, which is an education nonprofit preparing K-12 educators to teach all students LGBT inclusive history. And finally on the panel was Miss Meredith Halpern Ranzer. She is from Tinkercast, which is the parent group towards of the Wow in the World podcast, which you've heard Stacy, AJ, and myself talk about on Podcast PD. Side note, if you're not listening to Podcast PD, you definitely want to get on the Podcast PD train. But that's not here nor there. Meredith is an Emmy-nominated children's media executive, and she is the chief executive tinkerer at Tinkercast. This is the company and the creators behind the #1 kids podcast, Wow in the World, and the all-new Highlights Hangout, based on the Highlights magazines that we've all read at the doctor's office with our kids. Previously, Meredith was the VP of Creative and executive producer of the Sprout Channel from 2005 to 2015. Prior to joining Sprout, Meredith learned the answer to the burning question of her childhood when she found out how to get to Sesame Street, where she worked for 8 years as a producer and editor. She's a founding member and on the board of advisors of the Children's Media Association. So these were the 4 awesome people that participated in this hour-and-a-half panel discussion. It was in one of these very old rooms at Harvard in the Divinity School, full wall to ceiling, floor to ceiling, wood paneling, intricate carvings, a beautiful fireplace. And I mean, I felt as if my intelligence went up just by walking into Harvard Yard, which was really a super cool experience. But what did we talk about on this panel? Now, my initial plan, I'm going to peel back the curtain here on podcast production and how even I, who you might have some great respect for producing a high quality podcast, I screwed up. So I brought my
screwed up big time
digital audio recorder with me to Harvard, had the batteries charged, digital audio recorder with me to hit, stop on the recording, and now this might not mean anything to you, but when I recorded it, while yes, there were levels and I could see that there was audio being captured, the gain was not turned up past level 1. So while I do have a recording of the hour and 15 minutes of actual conversation and questions, if I was to play that for you right now, it would sound horrible. I'm not even going to imitate it because I don't want to upset you. But it wasn't good enough quality for me.
Nope,
it wasn't
not
good
good
enough
at all.
quality for me to present it to you. Now, I might turn around in the future and present it again because I was not the only one who recorded it. It's just that as I'm trying to produce this episode, I don't have, and I apologize, I don't have a high quality recording of the conversation. But what I do want to share with you are the topics discussed as I look at the notes I took during the conversation. So one of the first things that we talked about that I asked each of the panelists was, and this is based on my love of Simon Sinek, what is your why? Why podcasting, and why are you a content creator? And to sum up, again, I'm not going to make this a super long episode either. Between the 4 people that were on the panel, Eric, Karen, Deborah, and Meredith, it all comes down to storytelling. What their passion is, what they're interested in. Now, it's a little different for Karen because ListenWise doesn't produce original content. They work with content creators and podcasters to make podcasts readily available for you in your school or in your classroom, and they create resources that relate to and work with audio content. Obviously, one of the big groups that they work with is NPR, and just to kind of share a little behind the scenes for ListenWise, they're not always putting and adding to their website full episodes of NPR programs or old radio broadcasts, but they're having them remastered and cut down into, 7-minute episodes of, fill in the blank, or they're making shorter content, because they're designing stuff, not thinking that students are going to be listening in the classroom, say in a 40-minute period to a 35-minute, podcast. So they're trying to condense the content and not lose the meaning and make that available to students. That's also one of the things that Deb Fowler with History Unerased and Eric Marcus from Making Gay History are doing, because their area of focus is LGBTQ history and how we can include that into, history curriculums and make that a part of what we are teaching. So they are working together to take a lot of the interviews that Eric has done over his career and, condense them down and make these shorter, specifically 7-minute episodes that could be used in a classroom and have graphic organizers and enduring understandings and essential questions that go with the content to make students think about this particular area of history. Once we got everybody's why, we moved on and we started to talk about what skills. And this really steered the conversation towards how we teach listening skills and comprehension. Now, from my own experience, when working with texts in social studies or what our students experience in the language arts classroom or during that part of their day, it's always focused on reading comprehension and making sense of it. But we live in a world where we're not just limited to reading text on a page or in a book or on a device. Media is so rich and so readily available. We all know, whether it's us or our students, that our kids are inundated with things on the screen, whether they're watching, and how can we really take advantage and get them to be better at comprehending things that they hear. So by exposing them to listening to podcasts and audio, specifically audio-only content, we're instilling in them better listening comprehension skills. I can do this a little bit in social studies when I do a DBQ, which traditionally will be document-based questioning where students are looking at primary sources. How can I enhance that? With more current topics, I can give them podcasts or just audio content or audio recordings of, speeches or anything where somebody is even talking about even things that we don't have recorded in audio. I can give them secondary sources or tertiary sources that are audio based when the original recordings, don't even exist, let alone, somebody reenacting them. So all the panelists agreed that really the big power of podcasts in the classroom. So all the panelists agreed that really the big power of podcasts in the classroom as a teaching tool is a way to improve and increase listening comprehension. And the more opportunities we give them to use their listening ears, as I would tell Miles or Colton, the better that they're going to get at deciphering and understanding what's being said and what they're hearing, and they can make sense of it. The next thing that we talked about was, again, relating to screen time, was how do we get our students' attention from their screens? And when I brought that up, one of the first things that happened was somebody in the audience. I mean, we were a lot of people sitting around some tables set up in like an O formation.
That was a funny one. Let's see.
Some tables set up in like an O formation. And somebody, go big O. Some tables set up in like an O formation. And somebody instantly said, Chris, well, what do you do in your actual classroom? Because of the 4 panelists, me being the moderator was the only one in a classroom. So, and there were some other classroom teachers in the room as well. But to speak from my own perspective,